everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Coco and Daltz. We're real people bringing you real reviews of all the latest streaming offerings on Netflix, Disney+, HBO Max, Amazon Prime Video, and... is there one I'm forgetting?
No.
Great. I'm not Daltz.
And I'm not Coco.
And not Coco, what are we reviewing for listener today?
Oh, listener, you are in store for a treat.
It's been a long time since we've talked about listener. So.
Listener, you are very lucky because we just recently binge-watched FIFA Uncovered. And you know what I noticed actually in the FIFA Uncovered title, just as a segue to something else?
What's that?
No colon. It was just FIFA Uncovered.
Oh.
So FIFA Uncovered is a 4-part docuseries which essentially documents the corruption of FIFA.
FIFA's corrupt?
I know. It's hard to believe. This is kind of like a revelation to me because I thought that all large organizations that are top-heavy are free of corruption, like governments or the IOC or FIFA. They're all very innocent organizations that are doing their best.
Just like us.
Right. So this documents the rise of FIFA, period. You know, the rise from, it's just like an informal kind of organization that organizes soccer around the world to the monolith that we know now. The monolith that we know now and have known for the last 20 or 30 years was largely due to the efforts of one Sepp Blatter, who was the main cheese of FIFA, which I think is actually what his title was. And it talks about his rise and his predisposition for doing shenanigans around money and trying to get certain things done, etc. So it's a 4-part series documenting that. They're around 45 minutes long.
No, they're about an hour each.
And
they feel like an hour each.
Do they? Oh, well. So that's a good segue. Not Daltz, what did you think so far? First of all, I'm really cheesy on the summary. So how did I do on the summary there? Was that
No,
right?
that's fine.
That was good?
Yeah.
All right. So
oh, except that you forgot to say it's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. I forgot to say that. And it was just recently released. So we are on top of it last night as we are recording this podcast. What did you think of FIFA Uncovered?
So the reason Daltz asked me what I thought of his summary is because I always do the summary and I get tired of it. So today Daltz said, I'll do the summary. And I was like, oh, no, wait, I want to do the summary because I really don't have a lot to say about this.
What? See, that's not fair because that was my choice. And usually it's your choice. So I always have nice things to say or content to add. So you have to contribute. You have to. Well, I'm sure you could go off on FIFA.
Well, I meit's no surprise to anybody that FIFA is corrupt. It's especially for two people who have worked in sports journalism Daltz has basically worked in sports journalism for like 30 years, and I worked in it for like 11, 12 years.
I started when I was 10.
Yeah, so, you're really not learning... I didn't know the history of FIFA. I didn't know when it started. I didn't know who the guy before Sepp Blatter was. So that was interesting. And a lot of the intricacies of the corruption, I was out of sports journalism by the time of Sepp Blatter's downfall. So that was all semi-news to me. I wasn't really sure of the details, but FIFA's corrupt.
Yeah.
And it's infuriating, but it's not, if you've been paying attention or if you're in sports journalism, it's not surprising. The only thing it shouldn't even be surprising is that all of the corrupt people, they did actually get Sepp Blatter on camera, which I was surprised by. He's aged a lot in the past 5 years.
And he was cooperative too.
Yeah, he was very cooperative. But he and one of the main guys behind the Qatar World Cup bid just bald face saying there's no corruption, saying people weren't dying building the facilities in Qatar. I'm like, bro, we see the footage of the coffins going back to Nepal. Come on. So it's just...
Yeah, and they're reporting that it's about I saw something actually today on Twitter saying that there was around one reporting body was saying 6,500 people have died.
Jesus Christ.
Making the stadiums in Qatar. And Qatar's official policy is something like 3 and 7 were injured or something like that.
Yeah.
Like it's just not even in the same ballpark. So if Qatar is all the way lying and the other numbers are not factually correct, you'd think it would be at least like 200 or something like that. You wouldn't think it would be like 3 versus 6,500. It's tragic nonetheless. But that's sort of like, to me, it's interesting because how did we get here in terms of FIFA? That's why I'm interested in this documentary, because as somebody who has experienced FIFA, because I went to the World Cup in 2010 in South Africa, and so I had I had some knowledge about how that happened, but this docuseries lays out very clearly why South Africa got a World Cup, when South Africa is not really a soccer/football country. It's more like cricket and rugby. And so that was interesting to me, and the politics of all these things and how it's about broadening the game and you know the big picture, the well-intentioned quote unquote approach to it, that you try to broaden the appeal of the game, you try to give it to Africa because Africa had never had a World Cup before, and that's why Qatar got the World Cup, is because the Middle East had never had a World Cup.
Because it's 130 degrees there in the summer.
And that's the whole debacle around this Qatar thing, is because it was originally supposed to be in the summer like all the other World Cups, and they were like, eventually the reason prevailed somehow, and they're like, yeah, no, it's going to be too hot, so let's hold it in November. And so that's why we're having it as we speak in this podcast. It's going to be coming up soon in Qatar. But they were talking, I remember in the first days of, they were going to have air-conditioned stadiums, and it was going to be fine, and there was going to be all sorts of, those spray machines that people can walk through as they're going from one venue to the other.
Like in Vegas, when you walk past the casinos and the doors are open and they're just spraying water on people.
And people are wondering why the planet is in such a horrible situation right now. We're just going to pump the air conditioning into this open-air stadium.
People aren't supposed to live in those climates, and yet here we are.
Yeah, and so I was interested from that perspective, and also I was involved in sports at ESPN when the bids were announced for both Russia and Qatar, and we saw that in the documentary.
I was there too. That was right before I left.
Yeah, and that was like a double award, and the reasons I remember living through that, they were, we were putting money on it. I remember many stories had been written as like one of the tournaments was going to go to England, the UK, and the other was going to go to the United States, and everybody was pretty much settled on that. And then of course when Russia gets one and Qatar gets the other, it was like, okay, this is a clear indication that FIFA is corrupt.
I did like the footage of the announcement of both of those World Cups, and the Qatar contingent is like jumping up and down and high-fiving, and everybody else in the auditorium is just kind of looking bewildered. Right. Like, what did I just see?
And Bill Clinton was there because he was kind of thinking that the United States was going to win that bid.
I mean, that man could sell ice to an Eskimo.
Right.
So I understand why he thought the U.S. had a really good chance.
Well, he's not going to show up unless he thinks he's going to be accepting the award.
But he's also the consummate politician, so his face did not register the shock and disdain that, like, his smile, like, was less mega wattage than the usual Bill Clinton politician smile, but he wasn't just outright like WTF like everybody else was.
The celebration was right beside him. Like the Qatar group was in the theater right beside him, and it was sort of like one of those deals where he was getting jostled because they were celebrating beside him, and it was like one of those deals where you're at a concert and you're sitting down and the people beside you are dancing. It was like one of those kind of deals, and he was like, brr, and then he reached over to shake the hand of somebody.
He did smile at them and congratulate them.
Yeah, he was trying to be cordial about it, but there's some really good footage in this.
Yeah.
There's some really good, as you mentioned, Sepp Blatter is interviewed, and he's interviewed, it seems like he had all the time in the world to tell his story. And I think that's, from what we learned in this documentary, that fits into his character. He's somebody who loves the attention and stayed in that position as long as he could at no matter what cost. So it doesn't surprise me that he actually participated in this. It's good that he's in this because he provides his side of the story. However, the facts tell a different story. So
I'm shocked that FIFA is a nonprofit. That seems so... I can't wrap my mind around that.
Well, as I've discovered in my other job, that nonprofits don't necessarily don't make money.
Well, no,
they make a whole whack of money, and they're able to benefit from being a nonprofit in other ways that profitable corporations are not.
I understand development of the game, et cetera, but no, this is a pretty commercial enterprise.
Yeah.
Like, this is not it. Don't throw $1 million at Africa and be like, we're charitable, when you're making billions of dollars and people are getting kickbacks and money is disappearing. And
it was really well laid out in terms of, they'd show a flow chart of the top executives and who was getting what and who was more corrupt than others. And CONCACAF obviously was one of the more corrupt federations. But CONCACAF, for those who don't know, is North America and the Caribbean. And there are many members around there that were getting paid off. And Jack Warner was the lead guy for CONCACAF, and he was getting huge cash apparently, and all this money was going to all these individual associations.
And Jack Warner, the president of CONCACAF, he's from Trinidad and Tobago, and his national team made the World Cup in what, 98?
Something like that.
Something like that. And the players got like $80 each. And, because they went to him and they were like, hey, can we, get a split of the TV revenue? And can we get, a split of the merch or whatever? And he was like, yeah, sure, whatever. But, then, of course, just like movie studios, out comes the spreadsheet where, we have to deduct your hotel expenses and we have to deduct like the travel costs and, blah, blah, blah. So... yeah, so those guys went to the World Cup and they made like...
nothing.
Yeah, like $80. It's like when New Edition went on tour in like 85 and they came back after like a 2-year world tour and they got $1.37 each, right? Because...
so the FIFA Uncovered dotted line to New Edition has been completed. Only on Cocoa and Dulce will you find that connection, listener. So aren't you glad you joined us?
Listener learns something new every day.
Listener, so I know how our display text will be. How does New Edition and FIFA Uncovered relate? But I seriously though, I thought it was well done. I learned some things. It was a 4-hour ride,
and they felt like an hour each.
I didn't think that because I was really interested in it. I was really invested in it, and also because I had been part of that scene at one time in my professional life, so I could relate to the characters, and I knew some of the people, not like buddy, but I knew who they were, and I had encountered them at certain points. So I thought that was, and I had been to South Africa for the 2010 games and the tournament, and had seen Nelson Mandela when he was walking around, and they carted him around in a golf cart because he was not in good shape in those days. So there was one scene where Sepp Blatter trots him out to an event to show how powerful he is, and Nelson Mandela, who's gone through what he has gone through, been wrongly imprisoned for all those years, and Sepp Blatter is essentially using him as a figurehead for it to show how powerful he was. I thought that was a very telling moment, and we see the footage. Like that's a lot of this footage is included in this documentary. Is really well done. There's not a lot of things that, like some of these documentaries we've watched, they have recreations and it's animation and it's cheesy and it just doesn't feel right. There's none of that in this. Like this is all real footage. I mean, it's the world's most popular game, so we should have footage for a lot of these press conferences and things like that, and the annual general meeting and all that sort of stuff.
And this wasn't back in the 40s. This is like 10 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah. So on a scale of 1 to 26, what's your letter, Coco? Unless you had anything else to add.
Not really. I liked most of the talking heads. I thought they weren't dry. Mm-hmm. They were interesting. Like they definitely weren't impartial.
Right.
Because there was like the Guardian sports columnist who's written a book about it. There was another guy, I think his name was Ken Bensinger. Mm-hmm. He's written a book called Red Card. There's the guy who was the SecGen from FIFA from like... Mm-hmm. 2005 to 2012, like he got in a little bit of corruption trouble. Like he was interviewed. I thought a lot of those people were really interesting.
Could I just say one observation I have is that, and this is almost uniform across the board, is that soccer people have the wackiest hair.
Oh, interesting.
Like Blazer, the
Chuck Blazer.
Chuck Blazer, the American guy.
He's a CONCACAF. He was a CONCACAF official.
He
He's no
was.
longer with us.
Yeah, and some other of the people who appear. Some of the journalists had very questionable hairstylings. So that's just an observation that adds nothing to the enjoyment of the podcast, or detracts really from. You could have hair bingo going if you wanted to.
I'll let you do that.
Jerry curls for 200.
I don't remember seeing any Jerry curls, actually. No, I enjoyed it. It was fine. It's just, it beats you down even more given the state of the world today, knowing that, likely nothing has changed. Likely, Sepp Blatter is gone and a lot of those guys are gone, but there's still people there and, nobody served any jail time. And the DOJ, I guess, or the FBI dropped all charges a couple years ago or whatever. So nothing's ever going to happen. That's what happens. The rich and the powerful always get away with it. And yeah, and I are going to not get away with anything we try to do.
Well, we're rich and powerful because of the podcast.
That's true. Listener is funneling so much money to us.
Other than that, I agree with your point. But that was underlined. There's 2 points there from what you just mentioned is that, yes, the DOJ and the FBI were looking into this, and that's kind of like how this whole documentary gets started because of the, conceivably, the crimes that were committed on American soil with money being funneled and that sort of thing, and the fact that the U.S. lost out on the bid for the World Cup, and it was sort of sour grapes as well. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. But I thought that that was kind of secondary to me. It was sort of like the documentation of the corruption during the entire documentary. You have a concerned look on your face.
Oh no.
Okay.
No.
Did I have like something hanging from my nose? Or...
No. So I'd give it like a B.
A B?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd give it a 7.
Wow.
7.5. But I will say in my new ruling system, my new judgment system, I will say you should watch this. It's a good documentary. It's a good documentary if you're not into soccer/football. If you're into soccer/football, you'll really enjoy it, I think. If you're somebody who's tangentially involved or interested in sports, I think you probably enjoy it if you like documentaries. If you're looking for something that's like a Marvel movie, then you're probably not going to watch it. You're not going to enjoy it. But if you're somebody who's interested in that kind of thing, then...
Sepp Blatter and his bionic hip get in and out of a chair.
Well, they kind of have that, like you could do that slow motion walk of all the FIFA guys.
That is true.
With all their bellies bouncing and their ties flapping in the wind and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. Chuck Blazer, there's a guy who does not play soccer.
No. And a lot of those guys I don't think played any sports at all. I mean, a couple of the guys were former players, but not the ones who were making all the powerful decisions.
I also love how Michel Platini, goes to dinner with Sarkozy and like Putin or whatever. And he's just like, oh, I felt like Sarkozy sold my vote out. And I'm like, but you still were able to vote. You didn't have to vote for Russia. Like,
right.
So what's going on there, bruh? Like, don't be all innocent. Like, oh, what could I do? Oh, Sarkozy came in and voted for me. I'm like, no, something's up there.
Well, and I also think that to your point earlier about the corruption sort of prevailing no matter who's in charge is that there's a scene near the end where they have the new FIFA president in charge and he's all buddy-buddy with Vladimir Putin. And given where we are right now with the attack on Ukraine and everything else going on in that part of the world, it sort of indicates to me as like, yeah, the names have changed, but the approach is the same. It's still all cozy with these world dictators. And one of the lines in the documentary was sport and politics shouldn't mix or something like that, but they clearly mix. I mean, all those things mix. The IOC and FIFA. It's all a big stew of politics and sports. It's kind of sad. Like
literal envelopes full of cash.
Right. Well, they would go into the rooms. There was one scene they were talking about. They would go into a room and you'd get $40,000 in U.S. cash and you'd go on. And it was just like, you can do whatever you want with this in the football world. Make sure it benefits football. So then some guy who's never seen this much money in his life is going to go back to his poor, impoverished country and be like, I think I'm going to buy a car. Because then I can drive to the football.
That's what I do. So I'd also give it you should watch, but just, it's 4 hours.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're interesting hours, don't get me wrong, but I was feeling every one of those hours. So just FYI.
So you're now doing the should you watch or should you not watch?
Well, I mean, if you're going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Oh, I'm impressed because you were kind of making fun of it before. So
I just make fun generally.
well, that's true because you're a fun kind of person.
That's me.
Haha. So unless you have anything else to add, Coco.
Nope.
That's it for another edition of the podcast, listener. Wait till you get in store what we have for us in the next 2 episodes. We are going to blow your socks off. We went all serious with FIFA Uncovered, but the next 2 are going to be Laugh City.
We might even have a callback to a previous episode for one of them.
A very popular previous episode, may I add.
We are very excited.
We are very popular. So for another edition of the podcast, thanks for joining us, listener. We sure do appreciate it. I'm not Coco.
And I'm not Doll.